Her name was Claire, and she was everything I wasn't: bold, untouchable, a storm in a pressed suit. I was just Emma, the quiet artist sketching strangers in Central Park, my heart racing every time she passed by without a glance. Today, though, something broke inside me, and my sketchbook fell to the ground, tears blurring the lines of her face on the page. I'd seen her every Saturday for 3 months, always at 8 a.m., her heels clicking past my bench as she headed to some high-powered meeting. She was a lawyer, I'd learned, overhearing her sharp phone conversations about cases and clients. Her voice was like velvet wrapped around steel, commanding, precise, yet impossibly warm. I'd filled half my sketchbook with her. The curve of her jaw, the way her dark hair caught the morning light, the fleeting frown she wore when she thought no one was watching. But she never noticed me. Not once. I was invisible, just another face in the city's endless crowd. That morning the air was crisp, October leaves crunching underfoot. I sat on my usual bench, pencil in hand, trying to capture the way her green eyes flickered with purpose. She was late today, and I'd started to worry she wouldn't come. My chest tightened at the thought. What was it about her? I'd never even spoken to her, yet she felt like the center of my world. Maybe it was her confidence, the way she moved like she owned the ground beneath her. Or maybe it was the sadness I saw in her eyes sometimes, a crack in her perfect armor that made me think she might understand what it felt like to be lost. When she finally appeared, my breath caught. She wore a navy blazer, her hair pulled back in a sleek bun, and she was talking on her phone, her voice clipped. I started sketching, my pencil moving faster than my thoughts. I didn't notice the tears until one fell onto the page, smudging the lines of her face. I froze, horrified. I'd been so careful keeping my feelings locked away, but now they were spilling out, ruining everything. I dropped the sketchbook, and it landed open at her feet as she passed by. She stopped. For the first time, she looked down at me, her eyes narrowing as she took in the sketchbook, then my tear-streaked face. "Is this me?" she asked, her voice softer than I'd expected, almost uncertain. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. My heart pounded as she picked up the sketchbook, flipping through pages of her own face, drawn with a tenderness I hadn't meant to reveal. "Who are you?" she said, and I felt the weight of her gaze like I was finally real. "I'm Emma," I managed, my voice barely a whisper. I see you here every week." Her eyes searched mine, and for a moment, I thought I saw something shift in her, a spark of curiosity, maybe even recognition. But then her phone buzzed and the moment shattered. She handed me the sketchbook, her expression unreadable. "You're talented," she said, and then she was gone, her heels clicking away like nothing had happened. I sat there, clutching the sketchbook, my tears drying in the cool air. She'd seen me, but had she really? I didn't know if I'd ever get another chance to find out. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I went home to my tiny Brooklyn apartment, where canvases leaned against every wall, half-finished paintings of cityscapes and strangers. But none of them mattered as much as the sketches of Claire. I spread them out on my bed, studying the lines I'd drawn, wondering if I'd imagined the softness in her voice. The next Saturday I was back at my bench, sketchbook in hand, but I didn't draw. I just waited, hoping she'd come. When she did, she wasn't alone. A man walked beside her, tall and polished, his arm brushing hers as they talked. My stomach twisted. Was he her boyfriend? A colleague? I couldn't tell, but the way she laughed at something he said made me feel small, foolish. I'd built her up in my head, turned her into someone she wasn't. I packed up my things and left before she could see me, my heart heavy with the realization that I was nothing to her. Days turned into weeks and I stopped going to the park. I threw myself into my art, painting late into the night, trying to forget her. But every stroke of my brush felt like a betrayal of the quiet hope I'd carried. I started avoiding mirrors too, because I couldn't stand the way my own eyes looked back at me, full of longing for someone who didn't even know I existed. I told myself it was better this way. Safer. I'd always been good at fading into the background, at keeping my heart tucked away where no one could hurt it. But New York has a way of pulling people together, whether they're ready or not. One rainy evening, I was at a small gallery in Chelsea, showing my work for the first time. My paintings hung on the walls, raw and vulnerable, each one a piece of me. I was nervous, sipping cheap wine and trying to smile as strangers critiqued my art. Then I saw her. Claire. She was standing in front of one of my paintings, a cityscape with a single figure in the foreground, a woman with dark hair and green eyes. My heart stopped. She didn't know it was me, didn't know I'd painted her, but she was here in my world. I watched her from across the room, my hands trembling. She studied the painting, her head tilted slightly, and I saw something in her expression, something like wonder. For the first time I felt like she might see me, not just as a stranger in the park, but as someone with a story worth hearing. I took a deep breath and walked toward her, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and hope. This was my chance, maybe my only one, to make her understand. The gallery was a haze of soft lights and murmured conversations, but all I could see was Claire. She stood so close to my painting, her fingers hovering near the canvas as if she could feel the weight of the emotions I'd poured into it. I took a step closer, my voice catching in my throat. "Do you like it?" I asked, barely audible over the hum of the crowd. She turned, her green eyes locking onto mine, and for a moment I forgot how to breathe. "It's haunting," she said, her voice low, thoughtful. "There's so much feeling in it." "Who's the artist?" I swallowed hard, my heart racing. "That would be me," I said, forcing a smile. Her eyes widened slightly, and I saw a flicker of recognition. "You're the girl from the park," she said, almost to herself. "Emma, right?" I nodded, my hands twisting together nervously. "Yeah. I didn't expect to see you here." She glanced back at the painting, then at me, her expression unreadable. "This is you?" she asked, gesturing to the figure in the painting. I hesitated, then nodded again. "It's inspired by someone I see a lot," I admitted, my voice shaking. I didn't say it was her, but the way her lips parted told me she knew. For a moment we just stood there, the air between us thick with unspoken words. Then she smiled, a small, hesitant smile that made my chest ache. "You're really talented, Emma," she said, and I felt a warmth I hadn't known I was craving. But before I could respond, a man approached her, the same one I'd seen in the park. "Claire, we should go," he said, his tone impatient. She nodded, giving me an apologetic look. "Maybe I'll see you around," she said, and then she was gone, swallowed by the crowd. I stood frozen, my heart a tangled mess of hope and frustration. She'd seen Miral, I seen Ma, but it still wasn't enough. I went home that night and painted until dawn, trying to capture the way her smile had felt like a promise. But the more I painted, the more I wondered if I was chasing a dream that would never be real. The next few weeks were a blur of work and sleepless nights. I threw myself into my art, taking on commissions to pay the rent, but Claire was never far from my thoughts. I started going back to the park, hoping to catch a glimpse of her, but she was never there. I told myself it was for the best. I'd always known she was out of my league, too polished, too perfect, too straight. But then I'd remember the way she'd looked at my painting, the way her eyes had softened, and I'd wonder if I'd given up too soon. One evening, I was at a coffee shop in Williamsburg, sketching absent-mindedly, when I heard her voice. "Emma." I looked up, and there she was, standing at the counter with a to-go cup in her hand. She looked different, less guarded, her hair loose around her shoulders. "Mind if I sit?" she asked, gesturing to the empty chair across from me. I nodded, too stunned to speak. She sat down, her eyes flicking to my sketchbook. "Still drawing me?" she asked, a teasing edge to her voice. I blushed, closing the book quickly. "Maybe," I said, trying to sound casual. She laughed, and it was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. "I saw your work at the gallery," she said, her tone softer now. "It stayed with me. I've been thinking about you." My heart stopped. "You have?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. "I'm not good at this," she said, her eyes dropping to the table. "I'm used to being in control, but your art. It made me feel something I haven't in a long time." I didn't know what to say, so I just listened, my heart pounding as she continued. "I've been running from a lot of things," she said. "Myself mostly. But seeing your work, seeing you. It's like you saw through me." I wanted to tell her everything, how I'd watched her for months, how her presence made my world brighter, how I'd fallen for her without even knowing her name. But before I could, she stood up, her expression conflicted. "I have to go," she said. "But I'd like to see you again. Can I?" I nodded, scribbling my number on a napkin and handing it to her. She smiled, and for the first time, I felt like I wasn't invisible. After she left, I sat there, staring at the napkin she'd taken, my heart racing with possibility. But doubt crept in too. What did she mean she'd been running from herself? Was she even interested in me, or was I just a curiosity, a fleeting moment in her polished life? I didn't know, but I wanted to find out. I went home and painted her again, this time with that soft, unguarded smile she'd given me. It was the first time I'd painted her without tears in my eyes. A week later she texted me. Just a simple message, "Coffee tomorrow?" I said yes, and we met at the same shop. She was different this time, more open, less like the untouchable lawyer I'd watched from afar. We talked for hours about art, about her work, about the city. She told me about her life. The pressure of her job, the expectations of her family, the man in the park who was just a colleague, but felt like a reminder of the life she was supposed to want. I listened, hanging on every word, feeling closer to her than I'd ever thought possible. But there was something she wasn't saying, something that lingered in the pauses between her words. I didn't push her. I just let myself enjoy the moment, the way her laugh made my heart flutter, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about things she loved. For the first time, I felt like I was more than just a shadow in her world. I was someone she wanted to know. Our coffee dates became a ritual, a quiet anchor in the chaos of my life. Claire would text me every few days, and we'd meet at the Williamsburg shop, talking until the baristas started wiping down tables. I learned she was 30, born and raised in Manhattan, with parents who expected her to marry a man as successful as she was. She didn't talk much about her feelings, but I could sense the weight she carried, the way her smile faltered when she mentioned her family. I was falling for her hard. Every laugh, every glance, every time her hand brushed my night was like a spark that set my whole body alight. But I was terrified too. I'd never told anyone how I felt about women, not even my closest friends. Growing up in a small Ohio town, I'd learned to keep that part of myself hidden, locked away where it couldn't hurt me. New York was different, freer, but the fear was still there, whispering that Claire could never feel the same way. One evening, she invited me to her apartment for dinner. It was a sleek loft in Tribeca, all glass and steel, the kind of place I'd only seen in magazines. She cooked pasta, laughing as she spilled sauce on her shirt, and I felt a warmth I hadn't known was possible. After dinner, we sat on her couch, wine glasses in hand, the city lights glittering through the windows. "You're different, Emma," she said, her voice soft. "You see things, really see them. I've never met anyone like you." I wanted to tell her how I felt, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I reached for her hand, my fingers trembling as they brushed hers. She didn't pull away. For a moment we just sat there, our hands entwined, the air between us electric. Then she leaned in, her lips brushing mine, soft and tentative. My heart exploded. It was my first kiss with a woman, and it felt like coming home. But the next morning everything changed. She was distant, her eyes avoiding mine as she made coffee. "I don't know if I can do this," she said, her voice tight. I'm not sure what I am." My stomach dropped. I wanted to ask what she meant, to tell her it was okay, that we could figure it out together. But before I could, she was ushering me out, promising to call but not meeting my eyes. Days passed without a word from her. I tried texting, but her replies were short, polite, empty. I threw myself into my art, painting her over and over, each canvas more desperate than the last. I was angry, hurt, but mostly I was scared I'd lost her, scared I'd never been enough. I started avoiding the coffee shop, the park, anywhere that reminded me of her. But New York is small when you're trying to forget someone. A month later, I saw her at a bookstore in the village. She was browsing the poetry section, her fingers lingering on a book of Audre Lorde's work. I almost turned away, but something made me stay. "Claire," I said, my voice sharper than I'd meant. She looked up, startled, and I saw the guilt in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she said, before I could say anything else. I panicked. I've never felt like this before, and it scared me. I wanted to be angry, to tell her how much she'd hurt me, but all I could see was the vulnerability in her eyes, the same vulnerability I'd seen in the park that first day. "Talk to me," I said, softer now. "Please." She hesitated, then nodded, and we ended up at a quiet bar nearby, talking until midnight. She told me about her life, about the expectations that had shaped her, about the fear of disappointing everyone she loved. She'd never been with a woman before, never even let herself think about it. But with you, she said, her voice breaking, it feels right. And that terrifies me. I reached for her hand and this time she didn't pull away. I'm scared too, I admitted. But I don't want to lose this. She squeezed my hand, her eyes shining with unshed tears. I don't either, she whispered. We didn't kiss that night, but we didn't need to. Something had shifted, something real and fragile and worth fighting for. The next few weeks were a dance of hope and hesitation. We saw each other when we could, stealing moments between her cases and my commissions. She was still guarded, still figuring herself out, but she was trying. And so was I. I started opening up about my own fears, about the years I'd spent hiding who I was. It wasn't easy, but it felt like we were building something together, something that could last. But then came the call that changed everything. It was late, and I was half asleep when my phone rang. It was Claire, her voice shaking. My parents know, she said. They saw us together and they're not okay with it. My heart sank. I could hear the pain in her voice, the fear of losing the only family she'd ever known. What do we do? She asked, and I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that I wasn't going to let her go without a fight. I met Claire the next day at a diner in Midtown, her face pale and drawn. She told me everything, how her parents had seen us holding hands in the village, how they'd confronted her, their voices cold with disapproval. They want me to stop seeing you, she said, staring at her untouched coffee. They think it's a phase, that I'm confused. Her words cut deeper than I expected, not because of her, but because I knew that pain too well, the fear of being rejected for who you are. I reached across the table, taking her hand. What do you want? I asked, my voice steady despite the storm in my chest. She looked at me, her green eyes searching mine, and for the first time I saw something fierce in her. I want you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be this person. I squeezed her hand, my heart aching for her. You don't have to have all the answers, I said. We'll figure it out together. She nodded, but I could see the doubt in her eyes, the weight of her family's expectations pulling her in two directions. I wanted to promise her everything would be okay, but I knew it wasn't that simple. Love, I was learning, was as much about courage as it was about feeling. The next few weeks were a test of that courage. Claire's parents didn't let up, calling her daily. Their words a mix of guilt and ultimatums. She started pulling away again, not because she wanted to, but because the pressure was breaking her. I could see it in the way she hesitated before touching me, the way her smiles didn't reach her eyes. I tried to be patient, to give her space, but it hurt. Every unanswered text, every canceled plan felt like a step toward losing her. One night I couldn't take it anymore. I went to her apartment, my heart pounding as I knocked on the door. She opened it, looking exhausted, her hair messy and her eyes red from crying. Emma, she said, surprised. What are you doing here? I took a deep breath, the words spilling out before I could stop them. I'm fighting for you, I said. I know this is hard and I know you're scared, but I'm not giving up on us. I love you, Claire. The words hung in the air, raw and unfiltered. I hadn't meant to say them, not yet, but there they were. Her eyes widened, and for a moment I thought she'd shut the door in my face. But then she stepped forward, pulling me into her arms, her lips crashing against mine. It was desperate, hungry, like she was pouring all her fear and hope into that kiss. I love you too, she whispered against my lips, and I felt tears on my cheeks, hers mine, I couldn't tell. But love, I learned, wasn't enough on its own. Her parents invited her to dinner the next week, and she went, hoping to make them understand. She came back shattered. They want me to choose, she said, her voice hollow. Them or you. I felt like I'd been punched. I wanted to tell her to choose me, to choose us, but I could see how much it was tearing her apart. What do you need from me? I asked, my voice breaking. She looked at me, her eyes full of pain. Time, she said. I need time to figure out who I am without them. I nodded, even though it felt like my heart was splitting in two. I didn't want to let her go, but I knew I had to. Love wasn't about holding someone so tight they couldn't breathe. It was about giving them room to grow, even if it meant letting them go. For the next month we barely spoke. I threw myself into my art, painting canvases that screamed with color and pain. My work was getting noticed, galleries were calling, collectors were buying, but none of it filled the hole Claire had left. I missed her laugh, her touch, the way she made me feel like I was enough. I started to wonder if I'd imagined it all, if the love we'd shared was just a fleeting dream. Then one snowy evening there was a knock at my door. It was Claire, her coat dusted with snow, her eyes bright with something I hadn't seen before, certainty. "I told them," she said, her voice steady. "I told them I'm in love with you, and I'm not going to hide it anymore." My heart stopped. "What did they say?" I asked, barely daring to hope. She shook her head, a sad smile on her lips. "They didn't take it well. But I'm done living for them. I want to live for me. For us." Claire and I were building a life together, piece by fragile piece. We moved slowly, learning each other's rhythms, navigating the messy, beautiful reality of love. She was still a lawyer, still fierce and brilliant, but she was softer now, more open. I was still an artist, still quiet and unsure, but I was finding my voice too. Her parents didn't come around, not fully. They called sometimes, their conversations strained, but Claire held her ground. She was done hiding, done pretending to be someone she wasn't. I was proud of her, prouder than I could ever say. But it wasn't just her fight. I had my own battles, telling my friends, my family about us. My parents were surprised but kind, their love for me outweighing their confusion. My friends, though, were my rock, cheering us on like we were their favorite love story. We started spending weekends exploring the city, finding new places to call ours. A bookstore in Brooklyn, a diner in Harlem, a quiet bench in Central Park where it all began. I kept sketching her, filling new books with her laughter, her quiet moments, her strength. She teased me about it, but I could tell she loved it, loved being seen through my eyes. One evening we went back to the Chelsea gallery where we'd reconnected. My work was on display again, a new series inspired by our journey. The centerpiece was a painting of two women, their hands entwined, standing under a sky full of stars. It was us, but it was also bigger than us, a testament to love, to courage, to the beauty of being seen. Claire stood in front of it, her eyes shining. "This is us," she said, her voice thick with emotion. I nodded, slipping my hand into hers. "This is us." The gallery was packed, but it felt like we were the only ones there. A woman approached us, an older artist with kind eyes. "Your work is powerful," she said to me. "It's brave." Then she looked at Claire, at our joined hands, and smiled. "And so are you both." I felt a lump in my throat, a gratitude so deep it hurt. This was what I'd always wanted, not just love, but the freedom to live it out loud. Later that night we walked through the city, the lights reflecting off the wet pavement. Claire stopped suddenly, pulling me close. "I was so scared," she said, her voice soft. "I thought I'd lose everything if I let myself love you. But I've never felt more alive." I kissed her right there on the street, not caring who saw. "You made me brave," I said, and I meant it. She'd ignored me at first, but my tears had made her see me, and in seeing me, she'd found herself. We didn't know what the future held, more fights, more fears, more moments of doubt. But we also had more love, more laughter, more days of waking up next to each other, knowing we'd chosen this. Chosen us. The world wasn't always kind, but it was ours, and we were building it together, one brushstroke, one kiss, one tear at a time. Our story wasn't perfect, but it was real. And in the end, that was enough. We'd found each other in a city of millions, two hearts beating against the odds, proving that love, messy, brave, undeniable love, could change everything. As we stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, I knew we'd keep fighting, keep loving, keep seeing each other for the first time, every single day. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.